You're tuned into the It's Real podcast with your hosts, Kayla and Andrew Yagi. Each week, we'll talk about what happens behind the scenes working full-time in real estate and share with you real-life stories, our successes and failures as we work to help consumers and industry professionals reach their real estate and real-life goals. Here we go.
Welcome to episode 82 of the It's Real podcast. I'm Kayla Calendar and I'm a mortgage lender.
I'm Andrew Yagi and I'm a real estate agent.
Hello, Andrew Yagi. How are we doing today?
Hey, doing really good. It's a new week, new opportunities, new month, Kayla.
New month.
I look at it and I always love the start of a new month because I think it's an opportunity to kind of re-engage and regroup, not that you can't do that, more often, but there's just about, flipping the page, but it's also kind of sad because as we get into August, it's like kind of the dog days of summer. I mean, we're about a month from school starting up for a lot of people. Obviously, still a lot of opportunities at the lake, especially for people like you guys who really, make great use of your lake property. But for a lot of people, it's like, boy, we're kind of starting to think about fall, kids' activities and everything else.
I know it's only a few weeks and kids will be in school. My nail guy told me that yesterday. He's like, only 3 weeks. And I'm like, wait, what? 3 weeks? It always flies by. But I also feel like the weather has been so weird this year. And then the smoke from Canada and so much rain. It's just been a weird summer. It doesn't feel like it should be already August, but here we are.
Right. Yeah, I was working. I think we talked about it last time. My flight student Logan, who I had kind of given him a ride back in 8th grade, and he was hooked, and so we got him to the finish line. Got him his private pilot's license recently, and we were really kind of under the gun, Kayla, because speaking of school, he's going to NDSU to UND.
Careful.
I know, boy, but. It almost pains me a little bit as a Bison, that he's going to UND. No, just kidding. It's a great aviation program. So he's going and said, hey, we've got to get my private pilot's license done. So it just, and I feel that in a lot of the senses, there are a lot of people who are trying to tie up loose ends. And actually, Kayla, as it pertains to real estate, I think a lot of people that are looking and saying, okay, summer is so hectic, but where do we want to be in terms of housing before fall or before the end of the year? And even just yesterday, I had a couple of past clients just reach out, hey, we want to probably put our house on the market. And, we kind of want to talk about our goals a little bit. So I think actually 3 people over the weekend. So just a lot of people kind of, I think, re-engaging and thinking about more of the adult things.
Yes. Well, and I think too, a lot of people this time of year, especially in the Midwest, it's summer. That's their focus, is just relaxing and being at the lake, because it's 3 months of the year, right? And we normally, even in our world of mortgage, we see an influx of applications happen probably in August, September, because also people don't want to move when it's cold outside. Like that's such a common conversation when I say to someone, what's your timeline? They're like, before the snow flies. Like that is what's going to happen on almost every conversation I have now. So I think that weather plays a part. We've got a bank down in Arizona, and this is their slow time of year, the summer, because it's so hot. So every market. Yeah. And for us, that's what it is here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some pickup, some slowdown, just depending between here in September, I think a little bit, but yeah, seasonality.
Mm-hmm. So right on. Yep. What's new with Kayla and the Calendar household?
Dogs are healthy. Dogs are great. Lots of time at the lake, lots of hosting. We are going to try to get out there. Actually, maybe we'll see this week for a little mini vacay. We've had more people stay at our cabin than we've stayed at our cabin, in terms of length. So we've got to just get out there and utilize it a little bit. It's supposed to rain, but there's just something about being out there, and there's always projects, always. But I would say that's what's new, is just more projects and more lake time. And work has been busy. We just wrapped up a really great month of July. We had a record month, and there's just so much interest in buying, and even if people aren't pulling the trigger, there's still interest. There's still conversations, and that's all it takes is a conversation. Quite often, Andy, I'll have someone that says at closing, if you would have told me 60 days ago I'd be buying a house, I would have said you were crazy. But it's just about the conversations you have. So it's been a busy summer. aside from a conference, I have not traveled much, but it's because, like we just said, it's our busy time. So yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, no, great question. And I was looking. I always appreciate seeing all of your social stuff. It seems like if you're not at the lake, you're taking on. Was this at the lights?
Yeah, the title company in Fargo has a new location in West Fargo, so that overlooks the lights. So that was pretty.
I know I've never been there. I mean, I've never been to, what is it, Blue Stem in Fargo, to their amphitheater or anything yet. And probably, Season of Life with younger kids, although, boy, they look like really, really great venues and some pretty nice.
Well, the lights is right by our place, Andy, where we're at. So like we're close in proximity. And it's just so nice because you're so used to going downtown for these things. And it's, a jaunt when you're in the burbs, as we call it. But it's so nice to have something local and close in West Fargo. And there's bars and restaurants and this big pavilion. And Warren Zeters, I'd never heard of him, but I did know his song, was at the lights. And it was just such a great event. And what's really cool about concerts, Andy, is everyone is happy and excited. So it's such a good atmosphere, and the title company hosted. And so they've got like a suite, essentially a balcony. And that was really cool to see.
Sure. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, we've been traveling quite a bit, gone a lot of weekends, either out on Otter Tail Lake, or we've been spending time seeing some other family on my wife's side down in southern Minnesota. Everyone just been having a good time. This was the girls at a random park. So we've summer just seems go. And I was talking to Ella, our oldest, this morning, and she said, "Well, Dad, where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to work." And she's like, "Well, I didn't think you worked during the summer." I said, Are you kidding, Ella?" I said, You're not serious." I said, "Unfortunately, summer is the busiest time for real estate. And we're very fortunate. We've got a great team here, as I know you do as well. So, it does take some of the stress and some of the pressure off. But, man, I wish that winter was the busy time for real estate, when the weather's not as nice outside. But
I know. It is what it is.
Isn't how it goes.
I thought you didn't work in the summer. That's great. I'm going to say that to you more often now. Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Well, and those girls are probably loving their summer and, time at Otter Tail. I'm sure that they're just enjoying it. You remember your summers as a kid? It was just summers and Christmas. It was like the best, magical.
Right. Yeah, it really was. And, some of the best memories, again, out around the lakes, with cousins, like on the Yagi side of the family, there were like 25 of us grandkids or, first cousins. So we had, so many great memories growing up, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And now it's kind of fun. I mean, there are some days where I feel like, I could take it or leave it, when it comes to the lake.
Yeah.
Just because like almost 40 years of going there, and it's great. It's good, but it just, I'm also to the point where it's fun to travel. It's fun to see different places. Like the world is so vast, which, in aviation, I see quite a bit as I get to go to some interesting places, and it's like, wow, there's just so much world to explore. So it sometimes seems counterintuitive to spend so much time in one place, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think too, this time of year, I feel myself in like burnout mode, because when I look at my last 15, 16 weekends, there has not been one that we spent in Fargo Moorhead. There's not one. There was one I went to Vegas for a conference, but I asked my husband, I said, "When was the last time we were in Fargo on the weekend?" And he's like, "April." Because we were down there, and it's like when you're home a little bit too, you can get your bearings straight, you can finish your laundry, like things that you just don't do. Or I always feel bad because I feel like I don't know what Fargo's like in the summer because I'm always at the lake and it's so quiet. So I think there's something to be said that we go so hard that we kind of burn out a little bit too. So.
I had a friend who's in a band, and they were playing at the Windbreak a couple of weekends ago, and I asked them how the show went, and they're like, there were like 60 or 70 people there. And it's a point in case nobody sticks around Fargo on the weekends when you can go to the lakes, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep, 100%. But summer will be gone before we know it.
So, Kayla, I was watching the news the other day, and honestly, I don't get a lot of screen time at home, just because usually we're watching something Disney or something the kids want to watch, but did turn into the news and saw this kind of neat little segment about talking about housing overall. And I think it features a certain somebody.
Yeah, I think I know her.
Should we watch it perhaps?
If you'd like.
Well, let's do it. Let's see what the local media, what the spin is
Let's
on
hear.
housing and affordability.
Are often seen as the ideal time to move, but first-time home buyers are finding it tough to make that purchase. Valley News team Kayla Jakeaway has some advice to help, plus truths and misconceptions about buying a home.
Signed, sealed, and officially purchased. Excitement, nerves, and anticipation filled the FM title building as 26-year-old Nathan Bloom and his partner took a leap into adulthood by buying their very first home.
We've been renting for the past couple of years, just out of college, and then now it's time to move on with life. We want to start building some equity in a home. We want to have our own space. We want to have the garage space.
Buying your first home is a big accomplishment, but with rising prices and confusing headlines, the process can feel overwhelming. Social media platforms may say now isn't the time to buy, but is that really the case? In Minnesota, the median home price is about $370,000. In the Fargo-Moorhead area, homes average closer to $350,000. So the big question, can I afford this?
And it's getting tougher and tougher to find something that is move-in ready, say under 250,000. It's getting harder to find that.
Affordability is going to be the main thing that might prevent a first-time buyer from purchasing a home.
Interest rates have also surged, but experts say they're not as high as they seem.
We had so many years of these obscenely low interest rates that I think for a lot of people that became the norm. And then when they hiked up, it was so fast and it was an aggressive change and the rates were kind of volatile for a while that got really scary for people. And while historically we're still sitting at about a really average, if not below average rate.
Right where we are now, between 6 and 7%, that's probably a decent, that's still a good interest rate.
If you're ready to take that leap into home ownership, you might be wondering, where do I start?
Sometimes people start with finding a lender and sometimes people start with their agent. Talk to friends and family, find out who they've used and what their experiences are.
And once you find that right fit, your lender will help guide you through what comes next.
We always have a conversation. And then what we do next is we do an application. And then we gather your finances. A lot of people think you need 20% down. You probably hear that constantly. But you can put as little as 3 to 5% down on a conventional loan. Or some programs you can put 0% down. VA and USDA.
No matter your age, income, or marital status, the door to home ownership is still open.
I have one that's closing tomorrow. That is a younger person and a single person and is a teacher.
I actually helped a 19-year-old girl, single girl buy last year. I helped a 21-year-old single man buy that just got out of college last year.
So if you're ready to make that move, just know the market might be challenging, but it's not impossible. Reporting in Fargo, Kayla Jakeaway, Valley News Live.
Hey, I know that
More
lender.
advice for you.
I know her too. Yeah, they reached out and, I think there was some conversations about, people feeling like they can't buy. And gosh, Andy, I talked about the 20% down thing. And I always think, who believes that? Who's hearing this? This is crazy. Andy, I had someone in my office 2 weeks ago. I pre-approved them 3% down conventional, and they're getting down payment assistance in their budget, everything like aligned. They're out of pocket, their payment, everything. And they looked at me and they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, I showed them everything from running automated underwriter, from calculating debt to income, because I share that with clients. And they were in my office and I even spun my screen around and I said, this is what we use. As you can see, here's the guidelines, see this. And they're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But we were at another company and they told me we need 20% down. And I said, wait, so you applied with another lender. And when was this? And they said 2 weeks ago locally. And they said, you need 20% down. And they didn't even take an application from them. I was shocked. I'm like, they didn't even take an application, told you 20% down and see you later. That's the reality of some of these people. And that breaks my heart.
That's absolutely crazy. I mean, that's honestly negligence.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like, that's where, you've got great people in every business, every industry. You've got great leaders, you've got great thought leaders, but then you've got some that are not doing their job. And I think those are the people that some clients get to. And of course they're going to be, defeated. And that's why it's, I keep pounding, and you know this, you do it better than most, is education, 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 and talk to people. And that to me was eye-opening for sure. And I think I may have sent you like a Snapchat on this or something, or maybe it was on Instagram. But I also had a client that called me last week and they said, hey, how quickly can you close a loan? And I said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, we went with a different lender than you, Kayla, because our rate was lower. And I'm like, gosh, our rates are really competitive. Like, I had no idea you guys went with another lender, but what happened? Like, what's going on? You close on Friday. And they said that they were suddenly being charged $6,000 for the rate because they did not lock in. And so we were going to save them, I think it was right around $4,000 to $5,000. So they got baited and switched because they were just shopping for the rate. They weren't shopping for, well, what's the cost of the rate? If you want to go car shopping and you want a Ferrari, you know that it's going to cost you money. And so a lot of people just don't understand that. And so that's where the education comes in. And it's reality.
Well, I think, again, I know you're huge on education. We're huge on education, and we educate. But, it's like it falls on deaf ears. And because that's the biggest question. Everything that we do is commoditized. So you're a commodity. I'm a commodity, and really on both sides of the spectrum, as I look at either serving clients and selling a home, helping them buy, or even other agents, like we're kind of working at growing our team a little bit. And the biggest question is always, well, what's it going to cost me? Because, people don't know what else to ask. And it's like, hey, that's a very, very important question. And that's obviously a big pain point for people is, what is the financial implication? And even for people that are considering being an agent, but that really isn't the right question to ask. If it's, the percent, so to speak, or the pay, and that's all that matters. I mean, it's like, hey, let's look at the big picture. There's so much more that goes into this.
Well, and, Phil Jones, he wrote a book, I think maybe I even sent it to you, but Exactly What to Say. And he talks about sales and psychology. And what is it that people want when they're shopping for anything? And it's usually convenience, time, money. What value are we giving? And I think there's this common misconception that the lowest rate is going to get you the best deal. And I tell people you can still get a low rate and get a really great lender. It's not one or the other. A lot of times it can be. But when clients come to me, I'm like, listen, we're competitive. We're going to get you amazing options, curated options, and we're going to communicate close on time, everything that you don't even expect. Same with realtors. It's like, I'll ask somebody, what's the agent going to list your home for? And some have no idea and some know exactly, but they know the person. They know what they're going to get from Andy Yagi. And so I don't know, do you get a lot of pushback on price?
It comes and goes. It goes back to me talking about the book, Kayla, are you the favorite or are you the fool? If you're clearly the favorite, for a number of reasons, it probably doesn't matter much what you say or what you're going to charge. A lot of people are going to go with you. There are a lot of people that are pretty price conscious, so especially as things have been more expensive, and especially for individuals who are looking to move on to the next chapter. But, we've just gotten to the point where, we're not, we get so many requests on a weekly basis. I got 2 calls the other day from home flippers that, hey, we just need a valuation on this property and we charge a fee for that. And they're just shocked because most agents won't. They're doing free consulting in hopes that they're going to list it later. And, even have we done that in the past? Yep, we certainly have. But, as we grow, and especially, when you're trying to find a better work-life balance, you realize that you can't be everything to everyone. Just go find your people. Most people out there are not going to work with you. So just, stick to your ideals and stick to your guns, and
Amen.
They're going to work with you or they're not.
Find your people. Amen. From agents to lenders to everybody. Insurance agents. Doesn't matter. Find your people. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to call this episode.
Find your people. Kayla, we talk often, obviously, about the real estate market, and we're a little bit insulated in the Midwest and even in our area, having lower inventory than a lot of places nationwide. But even so, we've seen a slightly slower housing market this year as we did last year, and obviously various challenges last year versus this year. But I came across kind of an interesting article where it kind of talks about, Kayla, the number of home sellers taking off their market skyrockets. And so this is from Newsweek. And so again, and this maybe focuses a little bit more on some of the larger metros, although I am seeing more listings go canceled or expired in our respective MLS. But again, this just talks about buyers being reluctant, sitting on the sidelines, wanting sellers to lower their asking price. A growing number of sellers are taking their homes off of the market, according to Realtor.com. Delistings were up by 48% in July compared to a year earlier, as a report found, as sellers refused to adjust their price expectations to a market slowly shifting in favor of buyers. For every 100 newly listed homes in the U.S., 21 were delisted.
21. 20%. Never heard the word delisted, but I am seeing things sit longer in Fargo. I had clients this weekend make an offer on a home, and I'm like, I've seen this before. And they're like, yeah, this is the one we looked at, a couple months ago. And I'm seeing that now. I'm sure it depends on price point, obviously, and many other things and how motivated the seller is. But 21% or roughly, that seems high, Andy. Am I wrong?
I didn't have a chance to look at our local stats. I'll have to do that for our next episode. But, I guess it maybe goes hand in hand, Kayla, with there being more equity than there ever has been in homes. There are a lot of people, that have paid off homes. So I think that probably plays into it as well. A lot of people are like, hey, if I can get my price, that's great. If I can't, maybe I'm going to sit and, hey, maybe next spring is going to be a better market. I don't know. I've had some sellers that have been very intent on a price, and they've waited around and they've got it or gotten pretty close. I've had some that have done the same and they haven't, and maybe they've decided to stay put or just hang tight for a little bit. So I don't know. It was really kind of interesting. Again, like I said, this does point to, some of the larger metros, California, Riverside, Phoenix, and down in Miami as well. And a lot of people say, especially, hey, in some of these larger markets, oh, things are crashing, the sky is falling. But we also have to remember that prices shot up so incredibly quick that a lot of these individuals still have a lot of equity in these homes. Yep,
absolutely. Well, and we'll see what the rest of this year brings, especially in our market. But I'd be curious. We should, on our next one, just see what the stats are like locally and see how that compares. 21%. Gosh.
Yeah, we'll have to do some research.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. So we talk about affordability all the time, and the reality is it's really challenging to build affordable homes. My team and I, we built an affordable spec home, a slab, 1,400 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-cell garage. And, that was still about a $300,000 house. It was a nice house, but there wasn't anything overly fancy about it. And everyone just kind of keeps scratching their heads and saying, hey, how can we help solve this housing shortage? How can we put more affordable options out there? And it's really, really tricky. I found another article, Kayla, that I thought was kind of endearing and kind of hit home. Yes, in God's backyard, more than 800,000 homes could be built on land owned by churches. So, Kayla, this article talks about, this is on Realtor.com, it talks about the fact that religious groups collectively own more than 2.6 million acres across the U.S., and much of it's underutilized. Support as many as 800,000 new homes, according to a report that Forbes put out. Of course, the catch, most houses of worship don't want to become real estate developers. And so this article kind of highlights a group out in Boise, Idaho, kind of a partnership between a church and a nonprofit called Leap Housing, where they basically, I think they're leasing some land, and they've built a couple of, single family rental properties. They're paying a lease of about $1 a year. So obviously there are some dynamics between, leasing and not owning the land, so to speak. But yeah, so they manage and own 2 full-size rental or 2 family-size rental homes on the property. Rents 50% below market rate. So really kind of, becoming something that, I would say can support the mission of a church. Can you imagine if your church decided they wanted to do that?
Well, why do they own so much land? Did it ever say why? I guess I've never known churches to own a vast amount of land, I guess. My church back home in Walhalla was just this tiny little church on this tiny little plot. But did they talk about, or have you heard anything about why? Why is all this land here?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of reasons. So I think, number one, there are some churches, especially in rural areas, that are on larger parcels of land, even in metro areas. And even you look at whether it's a church or any type of, I think even about like McDonald's. McDonald's isn't in the hamburger business, they're in the real estate business. Not that owning real estate on some very high traffic areas where the land's very valuable. Not to say that churches are after the same thing, but oftentimes if they do build something, they maybe buy a big chunk of land, or maybe someone donates a parcel of land to the church, at which point they have it. I know in our community, our church across the street, were talks of our Catholic elementary school expanding. And so there were a couple of benefactors that would buy up houses across the street. And so they basically own a whole half of the city block. So I think it's things like that. I think donors coming together. I think there are a lot of churches that own, cemeteries and have even vast chunks of land by these cemeteries that, maybe aren't necessarily platted to be part of the cemetery, but hey, maybe for future use or something, but it maybe hasn't been used. So I think it's a variety of things.
Why do you know these things? Sometimes, Andy, you know things, and I'm like, why does he know this? I love that you know that. I never thought about cemetery.
Life experience, Kayla, and then just looking a lot at plat maps and GIS and just taking note of who owns what.
You are a realtor, I suppose. You have a lot more experience, but that is very interesting, and I wonder what will come of that. I guess we'll see. We'll have to keep our pulse on that.
Yeah, I think it's just cool. It says the project represents a return, to the church's historic role in meeting community needs. Churches filled gaps in the community over the years, whether it be healthcare or childcare. Churches organized to provide what the community needed. I think about the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church is really instrumental in where we are today, like in healthcare across the country. Just very, very, very interesting.
Yeah. I feel like that's something that could develop. I guess we'll see. I don't know if it'll be around here, but Idaho isn't that far, but you never know if it'll trickle down into the Midwest.
Right, for sure.
I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Kayla, we're starting to see, we talked about, kind of the market being a little bit stagnant, and people delisting their homes, from the market. But I came across another tactic, and I see this sometimes in the auction space where auction companies someone will say, hey, we want to auction mom and dad's house or their property, and so hey, they're going to list it on the MLS at $1. And of course, that home will go to auction, at which point, we'll find what is the house actually worth at a live or an online auction. But agents are now using this as a marketing tactic as well, in listing homes for $1 to generate activity. In fact, Realtor.com says that since 2024, $1 listings have risen 24%. And so this talks a little bit about an agent, who basically employed this tactic, and she listed a downtown Oklahoma City property for $35. And this price was inspired by the home's first owner, former Oklahoma Thunder star Kevin Durant, who done number 35 during his tenure. So he had lived here, so that's why they listed it. And so they kind of said, hey, there are a lot of homes, or what did they say here? They wanted to promote it. They noticed after looking at the comps in the area, there was a property for sale in the neighborhood. It had been on the market for 300 days. And they said, hey, the timeline's a little tight. We want to get it moving. So they put it on the market for $35. And it looks like they generated a variety of activities. Some people that thought a $35 check would be enough to seal the deal. But the majority of the people, kind of picked up on what they were doing and gave them some really, really solid offers. She said, however, the listing had been on the market for 62 days, which is a little longer than they had thought, but they've had, a lot of activity on it. So I guess the moral of the story, and I haven't recommended this to anyone yet, but if you really want to get things moving and test the market out, maybe listing your home for $1 is not a bad idea.
It's a good, way to get eyes on something. And I had listened to this podcast probably a couple of years ago, and they said that sometimes if you price a house lower, Now, I'm not a realtor, so I will not say that you should do this, but that sometimes it creates such activity that it almost creates like a bidding war. And maybe this is somewhat similar, but it definitely is a way to get people in. And now more than ever, if you got home sitting, I mean, I don't know. Would you ever do that? Would you ever try it?
I mean, I always tell my clients, when we're sitting down as agents with people that are looking to sell, it's my job to bring you information and data, to help facilitate the pricing conversation and to kind of share some different marketing tactics. It's ultimately up to, and it's on the seller as far as where they think their home should be listed. And they're the ones that need to make the decision on that. Again, like I've said, I have some people that they have a price in mind and they are intent on listing it. We oftentimes will talk quite a bit on why that may or may not be a good idea and kind of talk about both sides of the coin. But ultimately, I'm not going to tell someone you absolutely can't do that.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we've been surprised. I mean, I've seen other agents that have been in the market or 20 to 30 years who have given recommendations and people have said, no, I want to list it this much higher. They have, and they've sold it. So who's to say that someone won't pay X for a property?
Right.
And that's kind of the same with the marketing piece. If someone really wanted to try this, I would say that we'd be open to it.
Yeah. I love it. I'm curious to see what happens in these situations, but that's interesting. It's kind of clever.
Yeah, right on.
I love it.
Well, Kayla, we could talk on and on and on, but I know you have places to be, and we've got to save a little bit for next time, including a little bit of homework. So it's been great connecting.
Yes, it's been a while.
Have a really, really great week, and we'll connect again soon.
We'll see you next time, Andy.
All right, see ya.
Okay, bye.